Love books set in Paris? Me too. That's why I wrote Lost and Found in Paris, an art history treasure hunt with a touch of romance. Best-selling author Kristen Harmel said Lost and Found in Paris sparkles like the City of Light itself and will have you flipping the pages quickly as you're drawn deeply into its mysterious world of art, intrigue, and redemption. Thank you, Kristen. Lost and Found in Paris by me, Leon Dolan, is out now. Available from William Morrow wherever books are sold.
Hi there, I am Adem Kirbas. I'm here in Turkey, in Ordu, in my hometown. We are still in the pandemic. I hope you're all doing fine. I mean, before I start in today's episode, I wanna say something which is important, and this is what we left out: environment. I think in the millennial age, environment is probably the most important issue. I don't say it's not that I would disagree or not, but I think because it is so important, I some sort of left it out in the beginning, but nevertheless it is important, and it is as well as interesting because this is something probably only Europeans see and understand, that there is a whole different approach to environment in the West, especially between Europeans and Americans. In Europe, as you know, is the Green Party is very strong. They had a huge influence on the issue of environment, especially in the 90s. This is the rise of the Green Party around the world. This is the party which had environment as its sole or one of the key policy programs next to feminism, and their aim was against nuclear reactors and so on. However, and the difference between Europe and America is interesting, because in Europe, global warming deniers, they think a bit different, or in general, Americans think different about the environment, whereas in Europe, people associate more with their environment partially because the Europeans consider themselves as native to the soil, as part of the soil, and that's why they have a different relationship to the soil, whereas Americans, they rather they rather came from Europe. And if you see the society, the movements of the society in America, and the American society is very, you want to say agile. It is, for example, very common for an American to I don't know, grow up in Wyoming, go to the university in New York, and then settle down somewhere in Florida or LA, however. And so Americans are way more mobile than Europeans, and this has led to a different approach, a different understanding of the environment. Whereas Europeans, they are not that mobile, as well as they consider themselves as natives. They have a stronger bond to the environment, to the ground and soil. This is a very interesting topic, and we will talk about it. It is an important issue of the millennial age, because the rise of the Green Party was actually against technological development, against nuclear reactors, and as well as the role model the Green Party provides, so eating healthy and so on. So it had indeed influence, and we will talk about it in due time. However, today I want to talk about the last male genders. This is male nostalgy. I want to repeat, this is those three male genders I presented. These are not all of them, but they are, you could say, dominating in a society. And but and again, I will try to give some background information, which is very important to understand this male nostalgia. This is so it is partially, or people might assume that this was a derogatory term, but this is not the case. It is we need to understand this the view as well. However, I mean, within the technological age, this is what we saw and talked about it, especially with the rise of the personal computer as well as with the internet. One thing is different to all previous ages of human history, and this is that technological development happens very fast. It is almost, if you want, warp speed. It is, I mean, you somehow lose the oversight. I give an example. For in my youth, I learned or I talked about it as well. So in my youth, we spent a lot of time, for example, on computer programs and so on, and then this all became obsolete and so on. And with this new technological developments, a new market has emerged, and it's not enough anymore to be some sort of basically skilled, and you could say this is pretty much the end of the craftsmanship as we know it. I will talk about this shortly. But however, that this fast pace of course created people who cannot keep up, and this is you cannot always blame them for this, because I mean it is not always the case, but for example in the US poverty is mostly something you inherit. This is not true for Europe. In Europe, even though you may not be very fond of the welfare state, the welfare state has indeed some issues. I mean, we can, and I will talk about this in a later episode, especially of the Austrian welfare state, what's so problematic of this. But nevertheless, in Europe, you can say more or less, it's not true entirely, but more or less, you do not inherit the poverty of your parents. There's free access to schools and so on. But however, in general, school has changed. So how you learn, how you present yourself as well, and as well as more and more skills are being demanded from you. So this meant that this new technological age with its fast development, and this is never ending, is in a way exhausting, and it's and that many who lose out, they get frustrated. This is in the sociological term of Modernisierungsverlierer in German, called Modernisierungsverlierer, and this means that those people who lost out through modernization, who could not keep up this technological development, some in a way did not pick up everyone to the I think of the American Rust Belt once. This was the pride of America. This was once called the industrial industrial belt, and now it all got rusty. Now the hubs or the economical hubs are rather around LA and so on. So there's change. People could not keep up. Or in the Midwest, how many towns and homes are abandoned because you want to say, or can say, change moved on, but people could not, because of the simple reason. In the past, it was, especially in the past, was when you were a manufacturer, it was in a way easier because manufacturing in those big companies, they would partially educate and help to grow their own personnel. Many companies did this. They did not trust in the universities or in the universities and colleges, or the colleges and so on. They were not enough in the past. Those big companies, they would put a lot of emphasis in really bringing about new employees, raising new employees, and teaching them. I mean, there are a lot of examples, but this then changed. So those companies, they do not invest this anymore, and it is not only possible anymore, because now the average IT coder, or the average IT specialist or expert needs to have at least a couple of years, not to mention decades of knowledge and education. I mean, of course, there are exceptions. I mean, everyone knows the life story of Mark Zuckerberg, as well as Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. Nevertheless, they are the exception. These people were and are great CEOs. Nevertheless, their workforce assumably will consist of highly skilled and highly educated people, and for normal people, you cannot keep up anymore, and this, of course, then brings about a lot of people who then lose out. They are being considered, in German, they are being called losers, Verlierer, Modernisierungsverlierer. Yeah, maybe they are not losers or suckers in that sense. Now it is really tough to keep up, and it is not easy, and especially if you have to carry the burden of your family or of your parents as well. Then it is very difficult, because one change is significant, and this means if your parents are not well educated, if your parents, for example, did not attend college or university or any higher education, then it is you are most likely to follow their footsteps, and so on. So you inherit a lot from your parents, not only as well as your opportunities, and it is, for that matter, rare to overcome this. However, and then in addition to that, the new male role changed. We talked about this feminism question, this male gender, that man would be dominant, that man would 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 or that women do not need men, the emancipated woman, even you could say in a way is forced to show herself that she can accomplish anything without man. This has become some sort of important important self-understanding for women and so on. And one key, and this is I think very important thing to understand with male nostalgies, and this is that they think, or in this male gender, uh, men think that they cannot improve themselves anymore. So they come from a lower social as well as economic class. They were not very successful in school. They had bad experiences with school, and they for whatever reason were not did not advance in school. Then they see some sort of a barrier to any mobility upwards. They think they cannot some sort of overcome this barrier that's been put on them through this fast developing society, through this fast developing social landscape, as well as that they are being questioned as men, or that these old role models as of man, they do not exist anymore or are being questioned, and this then leads to many of many of them believing that the present is somehow lost, as well as the future. You cannot accomplish anything. There is no room whatsoever. This is indeed understandable. I mean, I was a carpenter, and you some sort of saw your future, and your future meant that you are going to be replaced by an automatic machine, and by someone who programs the machine. So it was some sort of inevitable. You did not feel or think that you can change it. I mean, everyone here would immediately jump in and say, yeah, then you have to learn something else. Yeah, but if you come from a background where education was not, or where people would not put much emphasis on education, these things are different. I mean, indeed, there are some barriers in your mind as well, but it is way more social mobility from the middle class to up or below is actually happening very fast and very frequent, but social mobility from the bottom up is actually more difficult. There are way more barriers, way more hurdles you have to jump over, and it is partially as well as a mindset. This means that your mindset has to be stronger than all others. If you are from the middle class, then it is some sort of easier for you, because you have easier access to all kinds of things. Whereas if you are from the working class, then you need at least a very strong mindset. You need to have very strong ambitions. You have to have a lot of will, and that the will to not only succeed but as well as to accomplish something. And the first step forward is always the most difficult. And if you start from the back, and if you have to catch up to other people, believe me, this is way more psychologically way more difficult than you start in from the front. So this male nostalgia is mostly you could see them among men in the lower classes who were not, or in a way or another, did not accomplish anything or did not see a future for themselves in their technological age. And there, indeed, this is when conflict arises, because there are still these role models as man, that you as a man are the head of the family, that you as a man some sort of take charge. We talked about the soldier paradigm as well as the other things in literature, movie. A man, in a way, always leads, and we will talk about this shortly. And then these men, some sort of seek the fulfillment of this paradigm in the past. This is when the past becomes glorified, but not, and this is important, the past becomes glorified because it enables this man to succeed or even or partake in this fulfillment of a role model which everyone has put on man to be considered successful or manly in that sense, because this is still is existent. I mean, we talked about feminism is always some sort of did not really did away with it. It questioned it, however, and men are still struggling to fulfill this paradigm of man. And there, of course, we have to be careful, because from a feministic point of view, there is this assumption that man would want to go into the past in order to rule over the woman, because in the past this was easier, and in the past women were some sort of subordinated to man, and this is what men are craving. Therefore, the past is glorified because of this. While I would disagree. I mean, it is indeed some men think that some men, but I think in order to subordinate women, one does not need to go into the past, but it is rather you have to say to fulfill this paradigm which is still existent. I mean, only watch recent Hollywood movies, or read literature, look at comics. This is this hero, we talked about this hero paradigm, this role model which is brought to man, that your life is some sort of a journey where in the end, or while this journey is going on, you become a hero. But if you are from the lower classes, and if you have no hope whatsoever to improve your social standing, then you of course seek a niche where you can outlive this role model which society puts on you. This is as well as with the what we talked about in male culturalism, that they seek niches where they can some sort of overcome this barrier in the reality, and this is of course place in the mind as well. And there are, for example, if a woman becomes some sort of a CEO, it is still considered as remarkable. This is sadly, there is not enough female CEOs and so on, but nevertheless, being a CEO, this is rather exceptional. There are, despite the fact that there are so many men and there are so many men in leading positions, and this means that for other men it is even or it is put a lot of pressure to become one of these leading positions. I mean, I know this in Austria. There were some men, especially Austrian men, who would sneak in, dress up like, I don't know, policemen or superiors or whatever, just for the sake to be man enough and so on. I mean, I will talk about this later about issues in Austria. However, this is from man, the social structure, the social hierarchy is in a way puts a lot of pressure as well, especially when you are from the low classes, when you are not, when you cannot really partake in this hero journey where you want to have or get acknowledgement. I mean, I want to talk a little bit of history again, but the history of craftsmanship and the self-understanding of man. I mean, before the industrial age, but as well as before we talked about the soldier ethos, but nevertheless before the industrial age, man, some sort of consider themselves with their work, with their profession. So your profession, whether you're a carpenter, whether you're a butcher or whatever, had a huge influence of your understanding. These were the guilds and so on. It had a lot, would contribute a lot to your self-understanding, especially as a man. You create something, you are able to craft something with your hands or generate something. This is, I mean, it is a new cupboard, a chair, a desk, whatever. So in the past and before the Industrial Revolution, this was very common. Marx wrote about this in a way, you could say, in a nostalgic way, that man, some sort of by the Industrial Revolution, were ripped off from this experience, and now they have to work in the assembly line, and this is why they would not associate themselves with the work anymore. This is indeed true, but it is I would say, and this goes probably too much into detail, but this is rather the self-understanding as a man, because if you stand in the assembly line, you had nothing to show for, and so on. So you were not this craftsman as a man anymore. And then especially in the industrial age and with the Protestant ethics, especially according to Max Weber, then a new form of manliness appeared, and this meant that man does not only create something with his hands, crafts something with its hands, but as well as makes something happen, like a military commander who orders his troops against an enemy. This was indeed important, this military paradigm, because the soldier, the man, fights against his enemies. He protects his home and his family, and the craftsman, he's a man. He then makes the shelter for his family. He makes the home, the door, the desk, what you want for his wife. He is the creator, and because man create, there is a reasonable understanding why he is in the lead, while he some sort of is in charge. And this was even in the industrial age. There was rather rather one head of a company and so on, and then he would order, and then things would be done. The businessman of the past and the craftsman, you could say. This is some sort in an idyllic portrayal of Marxism. The craftsman was his own boss. He was independent because he had the skills and the capabilities to craft his own work, or be the master of its own work, and this was the reason why he was independent. Whereas in the assembly line, he was stripped off of this key skill skill to become independent, and that's why it is so easy to some sort of force him to the assembly line. And this was in Marxism. And then with the technological age, you could say this some sort of changed, maybe a bit earlier, and especially how companies are organized changed. If you want, with Hannah Arendt, that now there was not one man who calls the shots anymore, and this was meant as manly and power. Now power means, with Hannah Arendt, that you can work in a group, that you work in consensus, that you have the power to work with a group, or can bring people together. And this is some sort of a new craftsmanship, but this new craftsmanship is rather built on speech, on your conversation skills, and how you are being able to convince people. So as the new businessman, it is not only whether you can order people to do something, no, rather you have to motivate people. This is especially with this technological age, where people have to be more creative. And if you have worked either in such a group, or if you create creative or do anything creative, then you know creativity needs some sort of a space. You cannot order and structure it. Believe me, I tried to do it. But it failed. So some sort of creativity is an empty vessel which has to be always swooned or filled with. So this is nothing you possess. This always has to be filled with new ideas, but as well as with motivation. I would say 2/3 of my creative doing is actually is about self motivation. Me being able to motivate myself to sit down and write, and this has then changed. So the new entrepreneur is rather a motivational coach. He can motivate people, but this is not really considered as manly anymore, because the man crafts things, whereas women talk. This is how it's all being portrayed, and this is some sort of against this male gender of a soldier. The soldier is simple. The soldier is does his duty. He lives a simplistic life. I mean, those who know James Dean, so the soldier is some sort of this James Dean type. He's calm. He does not need to be in the center, and some sort of, and with this new power mode, with this new understanding of manliness, some people, they cannot come together. They don't see themselves in this way, and it is some sort of, it is craftsmanship indeed, but people, especially thinking in these old terms, they don't really see how you can craft anything out of just with motivational speeches. This is not a cupboard you make as a carpenter. I mean, what is the effects? What do you see? What does it give to you? This is indeed very important. It is a psychological satisfaction you get from other people, especially via empathy, that you then some sort of thrive on the happiness of others. And of course, if you have seen all those hero journeys or all this when the dragon slayer slays the dragon, or I don't know what you watch, but however, in this business, the hero actually never really talks his way through the adventure. The hero seldomly sits down with his enemy and just sorts it out with coffee and cake or tea and biscuit, whatever you want. So it is over the deed. So this is the male archetype. This is the deed. This is the action. This is the hero takes with violence. The hero takes over the enemy, beats the enemy whatsoever. And then this new craftsmanship of a man who just talks, I mean, just motivates people, is being considered as feminine, is being considered as not manly, and that this would not be a craftsmanship at all. And then some men, especially men who live in this male gender of male nostalgia, they then want back to a very simplistic life, if you want, because in the era before the internet, in the era, despite the fact that for example, the baby boomers, that they were always scared of a nuclear war, of a nuclear attack, but yet some people in the present think, yeah, back in the days life was easier because you would had an overview, things would last and things would go slower, and slower in that sense that you could catch up, especially if you are from the lower social classes, so that the difference to the higher classes would not be felt as much, because this is another thing you have to be aware of, despite the fact that the middle class is growing, and that there are never before in human history so many people lived in wealth and prosperity. This is something you have to acknowledge. Nevertheless, the gap between some parts of the society grew wider. It has become almost impossible to catch up to other people, because this technological development does not stop, because there are always new inventions. We are talking about the G5, for example. Everyone is talking about G5, and that it will change a lot. Well, I mean, it has already changed a lot. I mean, G4 has already changed a lot, and before G4, G3, however, and now you some sort of think, yeah, where is this going to end? I mean, I want to summarize briefly what we talked about, and this is that in the especially of the male nostalgia, and this is firstly that the male nostalgia sees the present as a dead end. It cannot be changed, so he gives up changing it. There are partially barriers in his mind, but as well as real. This is real, founded in reality, especially if you come from a low class, and secondly, the past enables him to some sort of take part in this hero journey, or in this paradigm how a man has to be. This is still dominant in society, in popular culture. This is some sort of role model which you then have to emulate in order to be considered as manly as well as successful, because men are successful, or success is partially synonymously used with being manly, being potent, being strong, powerful, and thirdly, the past is considered simpler. It is without this never-ending and accelerating technological developments. So the narration goes, it is some sort of assumed that back in the days things were slower, easier going. It was not so that the gap was not felt as wide as today. So, and one could then easily catch up and would not be left behind. This was my podcast for. This was my episode for today about male gender. We will continue talking a little bit about other aspects of the millennial age, as well as I want to talk a little bit about my work as well. I mean, this was intended, this podcast was originally intended to talk about my work as an author. So we will do this as well. And thank you for listening. This was Adem Kirbas from Turkey, Ordu, and I hope you all are doing fine. Bye.
There are more ways to celebrate than ever before at the Jeep Celebration event. Hurry in for great deals today on the only brand that lets you go anywhere and do anything. And right now, get $1,500 total cash allowance on the purchase of a 2022 Jeep Compass Latitude 4x4. Don't miss this great offer. Go to Jeep.com to find your local dealer. Hurry into the Jeep Celebration event today. Residency restrictions apply. Must take retail delivery by 5/2/22. Jeep is a registered trademark of FCA US LLC.